In the quiet town of San Lorenzo, where the days feel long and the nights even longer, people live simple lives, untouched by the chaos of the city. But hidden beneath the stillness of this small town is a history thick with silence, one that the elders don't speak about and the young don't dare question. Mariano was one of those people who lived in the shadows, not by choice, but by circumstance. He was born with nothing, no father to raise him, no mother to nurture him. He grew up in the custody of his aunt, who saw him more as an obligation than family. Their small house, barely standing on the edge of the rice fields, was made of old wood and rusty tin. The wind would whistle through the cracks of their walls, especially at night, and sometimes Mariano wondered if it was just the wind at all. He wasn't popular in school. He wasn't known for anything, really, except maybe for the cameras. Mariano had an old camera he found in a junk shop when he was 14. It was cracked, dusty, and barely worked, but he fixed it with whatever he could find: rubber bands, glue, and bits of tape. Taking pictures gave him comfort. It was his way of capturing what no one else saw. He loved photographing abandoned houses, twisted trees, the fog that rolled in from the mountains at dawn. But he never shared those photos. Not anymore, because something changed a year ago. He remembered it clearly, the day he took a photo of the old bolete tree behind the elementary school. People always said strange things about that tree. How no birds ever landed on its branches, how kids dared each other to touch it and ran away laughing, but always uneasy. That day, he snapped a photo just as the sun dipped behind the hills. Later that night, when he reviewed the pictures, he saw her. A face, pale, thin with hollow eyes, peeking from behind the trunk. He never posted that one. At first, he told himself it was just a trick of the light, maybe a glitch in the camera's broken lens. But it didn't stop there. The more he took photos, the more strange things appeared. A girl walking barefoot in the background of a dry riverbed. A man standing by a window in an abandoned house, one that had no second floor. Hands, shadows, eyes. Things that weren't there when he took the photo. He tried to ignore it. He even stopped using the camera for a while. But he always came back. It was like something was calling him. His only real friend was Tino, a loud, funny guy who worked at a nearby carinderia. Tino didn't believe in ghosts or spirits. He said the camera was just old, and that Mariano was watching too many horror videos on YouTube. Sometimes they laughed about it. Tino even dared him once to take a picture inside the old cemetery at midnight. "If a ghost shows up, I'll cook you free tapsalog for a week," he joked. They never did it. Not really, but the laughter helped. For a while. One day, Mariano found an old VHS tape inside a wooden box in his aunt's bodega. It was dusty and unmarked, but curiosity got the better of him. He borrowed an old player from Tino's cousin and watched the tape late that night. What he saw chilled his blood. It was a video, grainy and shaky, but it showed a man, clearly terrified, running through a forest. The man kept turning the camera to his face, whispering prayers, crying. Then he stopped. The camera panned around. There was a woman. No, a creature, with long hair covering her face, standing unnaturally still among the trees. The tape ended with the man screaming, and the screen cutting to static. Mariano barely slept that night, but something inside him changed. He began to feel watched. He'd wake up at 3 a.m. to the sound of footsteps outside his window. His camera would turn on by itself. Once he found it recording on its own, facing his bed. Still, he didn't stop. He began documenting everything. Every strange photo, every flicker of shadow. He created a private folder on his laptop labeled "Do Not Open." It grew fast, and some of those files, he realized, showed things that looked exactly like what was in the VHS tape. Then, something truly terrifying happened. One morning, Tino didn't show up at the carinderia. His phone was off. No one had seen him. Mariano searched everywhere. even in places they used to explore together, the woods, the cemetery, even near the bolete tree. Then he got a message. It was from Tino's number. No words, just a video file. His hands trembling, Mariano opened it. It was shaky footage like something filmed in a panic. The camera pointed to the ground, then suddenly lifted. In the last 2 seconds of the video, Mariano saw Tino's face, pale, terrified, eyes wide. Behind him was her, the same woman from the photo, the same one from the VHS. And just like that, the video ended. Mariano dropped his phone. The room was suddenly ice cold, and he heard a whisper right behind him. He turned. There was no one there. That night, he began recording everything, not just with his old camera, but with a new setup, cheap CCTV units pointed at his windows, his door, his backyard. And it didn't take long before he captured something. At 2:37 a.m., the backyard camera showed the tall grass moving, though there was no wind. Then, slowly, a figure appeared at the edge of the screen. Thin, barefoot, wearing a white dress, her head tilted, watching, not moving. The video glitched, then cut out. When he checked the footage the next morning, the figure was gone, but the timestamp was real. The camera turned off for exactly 13 seconds. He checked his door. Locked. The grass outside, flattened like someone had walked through it. Now, Mariano knew whatever he was seeing wasn't just in his head. It wasn't just coincidence. It was real, and it wanted something or someone. And that was only the beginning. Because last night, the camera inside his room caught something he hadn't seen before. As he slept, the door creaked open. Slowly, and from the darkness, 2 pale hands reached in. The video of those pale hands reaching into his room haunted Mariano more than anything else. Not because it was the first time something had entered his space, but because this time it came for him. He didn't sleep that night. He sat by his door, camera in hand, flashlight ready. But nothing came again. The silence was louder than any scream. The next day, he didn't speak to anyone, not even Tino's mother, who stopped by asking if he had heard from her son. Mariano Lit said he hadn't, but the truth was burning in his chest. Tino was gone, and somehow this was connected to him. Mariano began looking through his old family things again. His aunt was always vague about his past, only ever saying that his mother left too soon and that his father was never worth mentioning. But inside a rusted tin box at the bottom of their wooden cabinet, Mariano found something different. Old letters. Most were faded and unreadable, but one had survived time. It was from his mother. The paper smelled of age and sadness. The writing was delicate. If you're reading this, Anik, then I'm already gone. Please forgive me. I try to keep you safe. But you were born with it, the gift, the curse. I don't know which. They will find you one day, if they haven't already. Don't trust the mirrors. And never, ever go near the bolete tree at night. There was no signature, just that chilling message. His hands trembled. That tree again, the same one from the first photo. He stepped outside and noticed something else strange. His camera was now flickering on its own, even when turned off. When he placed it near the letter, it sparked briefly, then powered off completely. It felt like a warning or a trigger. Later that week, after visiting Tino's last known whereabouts and finding only silence, Mariano returned home late and tired. As he reached the doorstep, he saw something or someone sitting by the well near their backyard. An old man, dark-skinned, with sharp features and milky eyes. He wore a woven shirt, held a staff made of twisted wood, and had a bag of herbs slung over his shoulder. Mariano, the man said without turning his head. You shouldn't ignore the signs. Mariano froze. How do you know my name? The man stood. Because I've been waiting for you. Your blood has awakened the curse. The spirits are restless. The enemies, older than your memory, are near. The man introduced himself only as Lolo Benui, an albulario who had lived near the outskirts of San Lorenzo for decades. Few believed he was still alive. Fewer dared speak to him. Inside Mariano's house, Lolo Benui performed a strange ritual using smoke and leaves. The room turned cold. Shadows danced unnaturally along the walls. When the smoke hit the letter from Mariano's mother, it turned black, then vanished into ashes. "You are the last of your line," Lolo Benui whispered. "Your mother hid you well. But the Aswangs, they remember. They feel your presence. They smell your blood. You carry the mark." "The mark?" Mariano asked. The old man nodded. "A long time ago, your great-grandmother angered a powerful Aswang clan. She was born with the sight, could see the spirits and shadows others couldn't. When she refused to serve them, they cursed your family line. Every few generations, one is born who can break or fulfill that curse. You are that one." Mariano laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I'm just a poor kid with a broken camera." "And that camera," Lolo Benui said, "was not yours by accident." The old man reached into his bag and pulled out a small, strange object wrapped in banana leaf. When he unwrapped it, Mariano saw what looked like a glowing shell, a kabibi, but inside it shimmered a faint blue light, almost like a flame trapped in glass. "This is a mutia," Lolo Benui said. "Your mother gave this up to protect you. It hides your aura, your power. But now that it's been reawakened, the Aswangs will come. Not just for you, for anyone close to you. Like Tino. Can I fight them?" Mariano asked, voice shaking. Lolo Benui nodded, slowly. "You must, but not with anger, and not alone." The days that followed were a blur. Mariano stopped going to school. He avoided the town. At night, under Lolo Benui's guidance, he began training. Not with swords or guns, but with ancient rituals, chants, protective talismans. He learned to use his energy, to sharpen his senses, to feel when spirits were near. The mutia glowed stronger when danger approached. But he also began seeing things, visions perhaps. He'd walk past a mirror and see not his own reflection, but the face of the pale woman from his photos. Sometimes she'd smile. Other times, she looked as if she were screaming. One night, as Mariano practiced tracing protective symbols into the soil around his house, a figure appeared by the well. It was his aunt, but her eyes were blank, lips pale, and blood dripped from her fingertips. Mariano stepped back, heart pounding. She spoke in a voice that was not hers. "The child has awakened. We smell his fear, his pain. He belongs to us." Lolo Benui sprang into action, chanting loudly, waving burning herbs. The air shifted. The figure shrieked and dissolved into smoke. Afterward, the old man turned to Mariano. "They're sending Usog, dark spirits, to possess the ones you love. You must protect your heart, or they will use it against you." Mariano thought of Tino, of his missing friend's final message. He couldn't let this continue. In the next few days, Lolo Benui taught him to craft anting, charms carved with prayers and sealed with blood. Mariano wore one around his neck, another hidden inside his shoe. Each night, he dreamed of his mother running through a forest, calling his name. He always tried to follow, but never caught up. Then came the night of the eclipse. The sky turned red. Animals howled in fear. Even the trees seemed to whisper. That night, Mariano felt a tug inside his chest. The mutia glowed so brightly it lit up his whole room. And then the camera turned on. But this time, it didn't flicker or shake. It was clear, focused, pointing at the door. And the door slowly creaked open. Mariano held his breath, heart racing. In the silence, something stepped in, cloaked in shadows, tall, thin. Its fingers brushed the floor. Its face was half hidden, but its eyes glowed red. The camera didn't glitch. It recorded everything. And then the figure whispered, "Your blood opened the gate. You are the key." The power went out. The camera stopped. Mariano stood frozen, the mutia in his hand pulsing like a heartbeat. He wasn't ready, but he had no choice now. This was just the beginning. Mariano sat in the dark, the pulsing of the mutia still echoing in his hand like a heartbeat he didn't want to hear. The red eyes, the voice, the way the shadow moved like smoke across his floor. It was no dream. He had felt the cold, smelled the rot. That creature was real, and it wanted him. For the first time, Mariano felt something deeper than fear. It was the weight of something he had tried not to face for years, the quiet truth he had buried inside since he was a child. He was alone. His mother never came back. His father? A name no one dared speak. His aunt raised him out of duty, not love. And now, with the truth unfolding, even the little bit of family he thought he had was starting to crack. The morning after the eclipse, Mariano confronted his aunt. Her hands trembled as she folded clothes by the window. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, voice barely steady. "About my mother. About the curse." His aunt didn't look at him. "I wanted to protect you. I thought if I kept you small, quiet, invisible, they wouldn't notice you." Mariano stepped closer. "You lied to me. You let me grow up thinking I was nothing." Tears welled in the old woman's eyes. "Because I knew. If you knew the truth, you'd chase it, and it would eat you alive." Those words stayed with him all day. Eat you alive. What was he supposed to do with that? Was he supposed to run? Or was he supposed to fight? He didn't feel like a warrior. He was just a boy who once wanted to take cool videos and maybe fix his family's broken house someday. Now he was supposed to battle the Swangs and carry a cursed bloodline. Later that night, while Lolo Benui continued carving protective symbols around the property, Mariano wandered toward the edge of the village. There was a silence that didn't feel like peace. The trees stood still, too still. Even the wind seemed to avoid the path. Then he heard it, soft footsteps behind him. He turned. Nothing. He kept walking. The footsteps returned. Faster now. He turned again, and this time saw it. A girl, about his age, pale skin, long black hair that covered half her face. Her eyes, wide, hollow. She stood barefoot in the mud, unmoving. "Help," she whispered. "They're coming." Then her face twisted. Her mouth widened, unnaturally large. Her fingers bent backwards. Her body cracked like dried wood. And in one blink, she was gone. The next thing Mariano knew, he was on the ground, gasping, clutching the mutia, which had started to burn hot in his hand. Another warning. Another message. Back at home, Lolo Benui placed fresh herbs by the windows and muttered prayers under his breath. Mariano told him about the girl. "They're getting bolder," the old man said. "They send illusions now. Half-formed spirits. They're testing you. Soon they'll stop hiding." Mariano didn't sleep that night. He sat beside the window, staring out into the trees. And for the first time, he began to wonder if maybe this was punishment. Not just for his ancestors, but for him. He thought of all the nights he wished for change, for something bigger than his life of poverty and pain. He had asked for adventure, for mystery, and now he had it. Was this his fault? Was he cursed not just by blood, but by desire? He began writing letters in a small notebook, not for anyone to read, just to empty the storm in his chest. Some were angry, some full of fear, but one was a message to his mother. "Why didn't you come back?" he wrote. "Why did you leave me in a place full of secrets and monsters? Why do I have to fight your battles?" He slammed the notebook shut when the tears came. The next few days, Mariano stayed closer to Lolo Benui. He trained harder, learning how to create circles of protection, how to feel the change in the wind when something unnatural was near. But it still wasn't enough. Everywhere he went, he saw signs. A crow perched on a window, watching with knowing eyes. A neighbor's goat found torn open in the morning, no blood spilled. Children crying in their sleep, whispering about a tall woman with no face. The village was shifting. Something old had awakened, and people began to whisper that the boy Mariano was cursed, that strange things started when he came back from the forest, that maybe he was inviting the evil. Even some of the kind ones, those who once offered him rice or fruit, now turned their eyes away when he passed. It hurt more than he expected. He tried to focus, tried to listen to Lolo Benui's lessons. But the pain of being blamed, of being feared, was harder than fighting monsters. One evening, as they prepared to leave offerings at the old Belit tree, Mariano finally broke. Why me, he asked. Why not someone stronger? Someone who wants this? Lolo Benui sighed. The spirit world doesn't choose by strength. It chooses by soul, and yours burns brighter than most. I don't want it to burn, Mariano whispered. But the old man placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Then learn to control it, or it will consume you. That night, as they walked back through the rice fields under a heavy moon, a figure stepped from the shadows. Not pale, not ghost-like. This one was alive. A man, tall, muscular, but with something wrong in his eyes. You're the boy with the curse, the man said, smiling. My masters have been looking for you. Before Lolo Benui could react, the man lunged. Fast, animal-like, eyes glowing. Mariano shouted, held out the mutia, and the light burst out brighter than fire, pushing the attacker back. The man screamed, skin bubbling, then vanished into the night. Lolo Benui fell to one knee, coughing. They're sending real Aswangs now, he said, gasping. We don't have much time. Mariano stared into the dark where the creature vanished. His hand still burned from the mutia, but something else now burned deeper. Resolve. Even if he was unwanted, even if he had been lied to, this was his fight now. But in the silence of that night, something else echoed in his ears. A voice. Soft. Female. Familiar. You were never supposed to survive, Anarchy turned. No one was there, but he knew that voice. It was his mother. And now, he didn't know if she was protecting him or leading him into something far more dangerous. The days grew heavier. The air in the village turned thick and quiet, like the world was holding its breath. Even the roosters stopped crowing in the early morning. Dogs barked at shadows that didn't move. People started locking their doors before sunset and whispering prayers they had long forgotten. And Mariano felt it, every second of it pressing down on him like a storm about to break. He tried to act strong, to show his friend Rico that he wasn't afraid, that the training with Lolo Benui had made him ready. But deep inside, something was unraveling. He still didn't understand the voice that called him Anik. He still didn't know why the Mutia reacted to him so violently. And the weight of being chosen by something he never asked for, it was crushing him. Rico noticed. One afternoon, while they sat behind the old chapel, sharpening wooden spikes and soaking them in a swang-repelling oil, Rico broke the silence. You don't talk much anymore, he said, handing Mariano a knife. I'm just tired, Mariano replied, not meeting his eyes. You're scared. Mariano paused, then nodded. Yeah. Rico leaned back. Me too. But we're in this together, right? Mariano gave a weak smile. Right. They didn't need to say more. The silence between them was honest. Two boys trying to carry something meant for warriors, not orphans. That night, the signs became clearer. 3 carabaos were found dead near the river. No wounds, just drained. A woman was discovered wandering in a trance, whispering about black wings in the trees. And Lolo Benui's protection symbols around the village started fading, literally fading, like something unseen was erasing them. The enemy was getting stronger. They're preparing, Lolo Benui muttered, his voice hoarse. They're no longer hiding. Soon they'll come for you openly, Mariano. Why now? Mariano asked. Why not before? Because now they know you're waking up, the old man said. And when the cursed blood starts to remember its power, the Dark Ones panic. You're not just a threat, you're a door. A door to what? Lola Banui didn't answer. The following morning, the sky turned red at sunrise. A bad omen. Mariano's aunt, who once feared everything, now clutched a rosary and asked him, "If you go, will you ever come back?" "I don't know," he said honestly. She hugged him for the first time in years. Maybe she finally saw him not as a burden, but as a boy carrying a war he didn't choose. Later that day, they returned to the bolete tree. It was older than the village. Roots thick like veins, leaves heavy with whispers. Lolo Banui said this was where everything began, where the first pact between human and spirit was broken. Under its shadow, the old man revealed a secret. There was an ancient blade hidden beneath the tree's roots, not made of metal, but of bone and spirit. Only someone with the cursed bloodline could hold it. It could either banish the Dark Ones or awaken them fully. Mariano touched the bark and felt a pulse, like the tree was alive, or waiting. Soon, Lolo Banui whispered, "You must choose how to use it." That night, Mariano had another dream. He stood in a burning house. The walls crumbled, but the flames didn't touch him. In the center of the fire was a woman with long hair, his mother. "You must forgive me," she said, voice echoing. "I made a deal to save you." Mariano reached for her, but she faded. Then the fire changed, turning into shadows that laughed. They whispered his name again and again like a curse. He woke up shaking. The mutia glowed faintly on his chest. The next day, the village council, those who still believed in the old ways, gathered with Lolo Banui. They begged him to take Mariano away, to hide him somewhere the spirits couldn't find. But Mariano stood firm. "I'm not running. You don't understand the enemy," one elder said. "No," Mariano replied, "but they understand me, and I'm tired of being hunted." That night, Mariano and Rico prepared for the worst. They lit blessed candles, tied protective knots around their wrists, and packed what little they could carry: salt, garlic, the mutia, and prayers. But even then, doubt lingered. "Do you think we'll die?" Rico asked, looking out the window at the dark hills beyond. "Maybe," Mariano answered. "But maybe that's not the worst thing." "What is?" "Letting others die because we were too afraid." Thunder rolled in the distance. The night grew darker than usual. Not black, but empty, like light itself had been swallowed. Suddenly, the wind stopped. No sound, no movement. Then a howl. Not from an animal, not from a human. Something in between. It echoed through the trees, through their bones, like a scream from the world before language. "They're coming," Lolo Banui said. And all of them, Mariano, Rico, even the trembling villagers, felt it. The enemy had begun their march. But there was something else. Something Mariano couldn't explain. A heat in his chest. A voice in his ear. "Remember who you are." He gripped the mutia, and this time it didn't burn. It pulsed calmly, steadily. He looked at Rico. "We don't run." Rico nodded, though his hands shook. As they stepped outside, a shadow passed over the moon. And in the silence, behind the fear, behind the pain and guilt and confusion, Mariano heard one final sound, low, ancient, and cold. Drums. From deep beneath the earth. A signal, the beginning of the end. And yet, they stood, together, not ready, but willing. And somewhere beyond the trees, beyond the old bolete, the shadows waited, smiling. The night stood still. No wind, no sound, just thick darkness wrapping the village like a shroud. And somewhere in that silence, something ancient had awakened. Mariano stood under the dying light of the moon, the mutia glowing softly on his chest. His heart beat loud in his ears, but it was no longer just fear. It was something more. A pull, a voice that wasn't his but came from inside him. He looked at Rico beside him, his best friend, shaking but ready. They didn't speak. There were no words left for what was coming. And then shadows moved, not walking, not running, gliding. From the edge of the forest, figures emerged. Tall, thin, eyes glowing faint red. Their feet hovered inches above the ground, skin stretched tight over bones. Aswangs, no longer hiding behind human faces. These are the real forms, the ones from the old stories, the stories people forgot or chose not to believe. Lolo Benui stood behind them, whispering a prayer with every breath, drawing symbols in the air. "Stay behind me," he told the boys, voice low and trembling. "They won't strike yet. They're testing you." But something was off. Mariano felt it, not in the enemy, but in the air, like something had shifted. He turned slowly toward the house behind them, toward the very people they were protecting. And there, in the shadows of the Nipa hut, stood his uncle, the man who raised him with heavy silence and harsh hands, the man who always told him he was cursed. But now he was smiling, and in his hand something shimmered. It was a second mutia, darker, almost black. Lolo Benui saw it too and went still. "No," the old man whispered. "It can't be." The uncle stepped forward, his eyes no longer dull. Now they burned like coals. "I always knew he'd wake up," he said, pointing at Mariano. "And I knew what that would mean for me." "You betrayed the bloodline," Lolo Benui growled. "No," the uncle snapped. "I fulfilled it. The darkness is part of us, too. You can't pretend it away with herbs and chants. We were never meant to fight the curse. We were meant to control it." The Aswangs didn't attack. They waited, as if he was their leader. Mariano's head spun. You're one of them?" "I was chosen long before you," his uncle said. "But I was weak. I ran from it, hid in shame. But when your mother died and left you here, I saw another chance." "You let her die?" "No." His voice cracked, finally sounding human. "She gave herself to protect you. But her death wasn't my choice. It was yours. She made the deal for you, not for me." Mariano staggered back, the weight of those words hitting harder than any blade. The enemy wasn't just out there in the woods. It had been inside the house all along. Lolo Benui raised his staff, pointing it toward the uncle. "There is still time. Step back from this. You know what these creatures are." The uncle laughed. "They're not monsters. They're evolution. And I am their bridge." He lifted the black mutia, and at once the sky cracked. A thunder that didn't come from clouds, but from the earth itself. The ground beneath them trembled. The trees leaned as if in fear. Then, from behind the Aswangs, something larger moved. It wasn't like them. No face, no body, just a towering shadow, thick as smoke, eyes glowing white like hollow moons. Lolo Benui's face turned pale. The Degabulag, Rico, gripped Mariano's arm. "What's that?" "A spirit of deception," the old man said. "It blinds truth, turns hearts, destroys bloodlines from within." The Aswangs knelt. Even Mariano's uncle lowered his head. Mariano felt the mutia on his chest burn hotter than ever. His skin sizzled like fire beneath his ribs. He dropped to one knee, gasping. The Tagabulag was staring at him, not with anger, but hunger. "You are the key," it whispered, voice inside his skull. The blood, the light, the gate, all in one. And suddenly he saw it. A vision, a memory that wasn't his. His mother, standing in the forest, holding the mutia, bargaining with shadows. "Spare him," she said. "Let the curse stop with me." But the spirits laughed. "It does not stop. It waits." The vision ended. Mariano opened his eyes, sweat pouring from his face. "I wasn't cursed," he whispered. "I was chosen, but the choice wasn't his." And now, the enemy wanted him not to destroy him, but to use him. A vessel, a bridge, just like his uncle. He stood, barely holding on to his strength. I won't be your door, he shouted into the night. The Tagabulag shifted. No, child, it said. You already are. And with that, the ground split open. From the earth, black roots crawled upward like fingers, wrapping around trees, tearing the soil apart. Screams echoed from the village. People running, crying, praying. Lolo Benui shoved Rico toward the shrine. Take him. Protect the heirloom. But what about you? Rico yelled. I've seen enough lifetimes, the old man said with a sad smile. Go. Mariano didn't want to leave. But the ground shook again, and from the crack in the earth, hands began to rise. Rotten, twisted, not as swaying souls. Souls caught between worlds, lost during old wars, betrayed by magic, and now summoned. Mariano grabbed Rico, and they ran through the smoke, down the hill, into the old cave Lolo Benui once told them never to enter. It was wet, cold, but safe, at least for now. They collapsed inside, breathing hard, heartbroken, defeated. I don't get it, Rico muttered. Why would your uncle do this? Mariano stared at the cave walls. I think he was tired of being nothing. The truth hurt more than the betrayal. He saw himself and his uncle, just twisted by pain, loneliness, and a hunger for meaning. And he realized something even worse. If I let this darkness win, Mariano whispered, I'll become just like him. Rico looked at him. Then what do we do? Mariano touched the mutia, now flickering like a dying flame. We stop them. But how? There's too many. Mariano looked toward the back of the cave, where the shadows moved unnaturally. There's one thing left, he said. The place where my mother made the deal. If I find it, maybe I can undo it. Or die trying. Mariano smiled faintly. I already died the day she gave me away. The shadows behind them thickened. And somewhere in the dark, a voice called again. Not the enemy. Not the spirit. His mother. But this time, she wasn't warning him. She was calling him forward. Toward destiny. Toward truth. And toward the final war that hadn't even begun yet. The cave walls seemed to breathe. Shadows flickered, not just from their torches, but from something deeper, something old and watching. Mariano stood still, one hand pressed against the damp stone where his mother's voice had last called to him. He could feel again, not fear, but grief. Grief buried beneath years of rejection and silence. Grief that now threatened to become rage. Behind him, Rico tightened the straps of the old satchel carrying the mutia and the last of Lolo Benui's healing herbs. You really think the place she made the deal still exists? It has to, Mariano whispered. And if it does, maybe I can speak to her again. Maybe I can understand why all this started. They walked deeper into the cavern, following an old path marked by faint carvings on the wall. Symbols Lolo Benui once said were older than the village itself. The air grew colder, thicker. Then suddenly, it opened. A hollow chamber. In the center, a stone pedestal. And on top of it, a broken shell. The other half of the mutia. Rico gasped. Is that? Mariano stepped forward. As he did, memories crashed into him. His mother standing here, weeping. His uncle, watching from the shadows. The spirits circling her, whispering. Protect the child, they said, but your life will be the price. She had given everything, so he could be free. But he wasn't free. He was still bound, not just by blood, but by the power they feared in him. Mariano reached for the shell, and the second he touched it, the chamber exploded in light. A wind howled through the cavern as the walls pulsed and cracked. And from the air, she appeared, his mother, but not as he remembered. Younger, glowing, her eyes soft but filled with sorrow. My son, she said gently, you weren't supposed to return here. I had no choice. Tears filled his eyes. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were meant to live in peace, she said, touching his cheek. But I see now, peace will never come if the darkness still lives. Outside, a roar echoed through the rocks. The Tagabulag had found them. The stones shook as a voice slithered into the chamber. She broke the deal. Now you belong to us. Rico stepped in front of the pedestal, gripping the staff Lolo Benui left. We're not afraid of you. But the shadow answered with laughter. And from a far wall, it emerged, twice the size it had been before, its form now complete. The Tagabulag stretched across the stone like a giant serpent, its eyes hollow, its body made of smoke and bone. You think you've come here for answers, it hissed. But you came here to fulfill the prophecy. It struck. A blast of black wind hurled Rico against the cave wall. Mariano screamed, rushing to his friend, but the Tagabulag blocked his path. No more running, it said. No more hiding. Mariano stood, chest burning. The two Mucias, his and the one from the pedestal, were glowing in sync now. His mother's spirit began to fade. You must choose, Anik. Join it or fight it. But if you fight, you must give all. All. She nodded. Your name, your blood, your past. Mariano trembled. I'll lose myself. No, she whispered. You'll become who you were always meant to be. The Tagabulag lunged again, this time aiming straight for Mariano. But he didn't run. He gripped both Mucias, pressed them together, and felt them burn into his skin, merging into one. Light exploded from his chest, and in that moment he saw everything. The first curse, the broken bloodline, the deal made generations ago to trap the spirit beneath the earth. And now it was free, unless he stopped it here. He screamed, not in pain, but in release, and the light blasted outward, striking the shadow. The Tagabulag screeched, folding in on itself. But it didn't vanish. It split into hundreds of smaller forms. Wraiths, curses, whispers that flew through cracks in the cave, escaping into the world. No! Rico shouted. It's getting away. Mariano dropped to his knees, gasping. I didn't kill it. His mother's voice was fading. You broke its body, but not its voice. It will find others. Those who are weak, angry, hungry. Then I'll stop it, he said, again and again. But she was gone, and the cave began to collapse. Rico pulled him to his feet, and together they ran, dodging falling rock and fire. As they reached the surface, dawn broke over the mountains. But the sky wasn't quiet. Smoke rose from distant homes. The ground still trembled. The village was scarred, but not destroyed. People emerged from hiding, eyes wide with confusion and fear. Mariano and Rico walked through them, silent, until a woman stepped forward. You saved us. No, Mariano said. I delayed something worse. Behind them, the shrine where Lolo Benui once stood was now ashes. A child handed Mariano a stone from the wreckage, blackened, but glowing faint blue. What now? Rico asked. Mariano looked at the horizon. I carry this light. I carry their hope. And when the shadow rises again, he clenched the stone. I'll be ready. But as they turned to leave, a soft breeze blew across the field. And on that breeze, a whisper, familiar, dark, his uncle's voice. You broke the shell. It said distant but clear. But I still hold the pearl. Mariano froze. A cold chill ran down his spine. He hadn't defeated his uncle. He had only freed him. The final battle had yet to come. The days after the battle felt like walking through ashes. Mariano stood at the edge of the village, staring at the burned remains of the shrine. The trees nearby were charred, and the air still held the faint scent of smoke and earth. Children no longer played in the open fields. The townspeople spoke in whispers, and at night the wind carried strange sounds. Faint, like echoes of something trying to return. It wasn't over. Not really. But for now there was peace. Rico sat by the old well, bandaged and bruised, staring at the sky. "You think he's still out there?" he asked quietly. Mariano nodded. "My uncle never died. He was waiting, watching. I think he let me win to prepare me." Rico glanced at him. "Then why do you look so calm?" Mariano took a deep breath. "Because I made my choice. I won't run anymore." The villagers, once distant and wary of Mariano, now approached with quiet respect. Some offered fruit or rice, others just a nod or a hand on his shoulder. But what touched him most was when old man Ancora, who once cursed him for being bad luck, placed a single sampaguita flower in his hand and whispered, "Your mother would be proud." That night, Mariano walked alone to the fields where it all began. The moon was high. The grass swayed gently. And there, under the shadow of the manga tree, he sat and remembered. He thought of his mother's sacrifice, her voice in the cave, the choice she gave him. He remembered the light, the pain, the power, and how it didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a burden. But burdens, he realized, are what shape us. He closed his eyes. In the quiet, a familiar voice echoed. Lolo Benui's voice, gentle but firm. "Strength is not in power, Apo. It's in knowing when to forgive, even those who broke you." Forgive? Even his uncle? Could he? He opened his hand, revealing the glowing stone the child had given him. It pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. Suddenly the wind shifted. Leaves rustled behind him. A soft step. Mariano turned sharply. A woman stood there. Not his mother, not a spirit, but Amara. She looked the same as in the visions. Young, quiet, with eyes that held centuries of sadness. "You were the one who first made the pact," Mariano whispered. Amara nodded. "Long before your family, long before this village, I was the first to touch the Tagabulag. I thought I could control it. I was wrong." He stood slowly. "Then why are you here now?" "To end it," she said. "With you." Mariano frowned. "It's over. I defeated it." Amara shook her head. "You defeated a part of it. But it lives in every heart that gives in to hatred, in every voice that chooses revenge. You carry both the light and the dark now, Mariano. The final battle is not against the Tagabulag." She stepped closer. "It's against yourself." His chest tightened. He remembered the rage in the cave. The moment he almost lost control. The moment he wanted to destroy, not just the shadow, but everything connected to it. Even his uncle. Especially his uncle. "Then what do I do?" Mariano asked. Amara reached into the folds of her robe and pulled out a small object. A mirror. Round, framed in wood, the glass foggy but intact. "This belonged to the first guardian," she said. "Look into it when you're ready to see the truth." She placed it in his hands and vanished like mist in the breeze. Back at the hut, Mariano sat before the mirror for hours. Rico had fallen asleep by the fire. Outside, the village was silent. When the first light of dawn crept through the window, Mariano finally looked. And he saw, not just his face, he saw every moment of fear he'd ever felt. Every time he was mocked, pushed away, cursed. But he also saw the people who stood by him. His mother's arms, Rico's loyalty, Lolo Benui's teachings, and something else, his uncle, young and broken, kneeling by a grave. The same pain, the same wound. They had both been hurt by the same curse, and they both became part of it. Mariano let out a breath. That was the truth. Hate passes through blood like sickness, unless someone stops it. He picked up the Mucius stone and whispered, "Let it end with me." That day, Mariano walked to the cliffs beyond the village. The sky was blue, the sea below calm and endless. He held the stone high and, for the last time, called to the spirits. "I forgive you," he whispered. A warm wind answered, soft, grateful. Then he released the stone into the sea. It sank, glowing, fading into the deep. Back at the village, Rico ran to meet him. "Are you done?" Mariano smiled, eyes tired but light. No, but I'm no longer afraid. In the weeks that followed, life returned to the village. Fields were planted again. Laughter returned. And Mariano, once the cursed child, now became the one people came to for healing, for stories, for strength. He never called himself a hero, but in every small act, helping rebuild a house, comforting a crying child, protecting the weak, he proved he was one. The shadow didn't disappear from the world, but it learned to fear the light. And the boy it once tried to silence was now its greatest threat. Years later, a child would ask him, "Toto Mariano, is it true you faced a monster?" Mariano would smile gently. "Yes," he'd say, "but the real monster wasn't out there." He'd tap his chest. "It lived in here." The child's eyes would widen. "Were you scared?" "Every day," Mariano would answer. "But I still stood up." And in that simple truth, passed on like a flame, the real magic lived on. The end.